What's going on, everyone? So I've talked about Ethan and his kind of knowledge of FROMVILLE, right? He is constantly relaying information, relaying details that are usually reign true, even just like the story walker, right? And you see Julie, and she's the story walker. And you have the character in Julie that is learning kind of the ins and outs of the dungeon and how to navigate through these various stories as it's put. And she's trying to change the story, and she ends up failing by trying to save her father, right? But it kind of does beg this question of like, okay, well, where is the man in yellow? Like, where has the man in yellow been? And who is the man in yellow? Well, what if the man in yellow is actually Ethan, all grown up, who has changed and corrupted and whatever, right? Like, has conformed to this place, has bought into this place, right? And one of the big things that kind of like you could argue would tie into that was Sarah, right? So Sarah ends up being told by the voices in her head, right? That, hey, you need to kill the boy, talking about Ethan. And she makes the attempt. She obviously doesn't. And now she's at the point where she regrets it. She thinks the voices in her head were evil and that they wouldn't, that they were leading her down a dark path. But what if they weren't? What if they were trying to prevent the man in yellow from actually being created, right? Like the whole thing was like, hey, if you kill Ethan, everyone will get to go home. Well, what if it was true? Right? What if that is actually what would have happened? And if you would have killed Ethan and you would have taken out Ethan, the man in yellow never would have created, would have never became, and thus, everyone would have gotten to go home. And Sarah may have been able to save the day. Right? The man in yellow is somebody, is something. And like I said, you have Julie, who is this story walker, right? It would kind of make sense that she is the light, so to speak, and Ethan eventually becomes the dark. The storyteller, which is what I've talked about with Ethan, he may be the storyteller. The man in yellow could be the storyteller. He comes and intervenes when people kind of interfere with the story. There's rules, there's regulations, there's things there's order to this. There's structure as if a story is being told, is taking place. And now that you've opened up the potential for time travel and time manipulation and all this stuff, who knows what the interweavings of the timeline are, right? We're clearly watching this show from the past, right? It's trying to catch up to itself. How do we know that? What's the biggest example of that? Julie from the future, completely different, shorter hair, all that stuff, coming to try to prevent Jim from dying, right? Like that's your biggest clue. Okay, we're watching this from behind. But this place, this cycle, I mean, even Martin knew who Julie was. How? Unless this has already happened. And this is some type of time loop, maybe created by Julie. Maybe the man in yellow, because we didn't see the man in yellow until she learned about the time travel thing. So what if she is the cause for that, and she ends up turning her brother, down this dark path, this dark timeline, that ultimately leads him to being the man in yellow, right? Obviously, look, the man in yellow is incredibly old compared to Ethan. So you're talking, 70 years, 60 years of spending in this place, right? And growing up in this place and knowing things and having information, having details, right? Like this is something that could really tie in. And then even like Sarah, right? Like, because one of the kind of counterpoint, like, well, okay, it can't be good because look, Elgin. Yeah, but Elgin was speaking to a evil spirit, right? We don't know who Sarah was actually talking to, what voices in her head. We've seen the boy in white actually help Sarah and communicate with Sarah. And Sarah has said, he doesn't seem like a boy, right? I don't think he's a boy, right? Like, so she is connected enough to the boy in white to where he helped her. What if the voices in her head genuinely are trying to help her? What if they could be voices from the future for all we know? We don't, like, with Elgin, we saw the evil. You see who he's communicating with. When it comes to Sarah, we have no idea. You have Father Khatri, who believed, right? That this was reigned true. And I get that this place is designed to kind of manipulate you. Get that this place is designed to kind of, get into your head, but not everything has always been evil. There have been things that have kind of broken in some of these characters' favors, and then, the boy in white trying to be helpful. And who's to say that there aren't these spirits that are trying to help, characters like we seen with Boyd, and maybe in the beginning when Sarah was gathering the information from the spirits, maybe they were trying to help. I mean, they helped, not directly. They weren't like, oh, hey, Fatima is in the cellar, right? But they at least gave Sarah the information. They were laughing and stuff like that, right? Which leads you to believe that they're evil. But again, there's also this balance and structure to this place. Like even the boy in white. Like, why doesn't the boy in white just come up and just give you all the answers? Right? Because again, there's the structure, right? You said, you guys need to figure it out for yourself. I just think it makes sense that Julie would kind of could have maybe indirectly created the monster that ultimately becomes her brother, right? And look, that's a story as old as time, right? Two siblings, one becomes good, one becomes evil, right? It's not crazy to think that, Julie's the one, that the story walker that's trying to navigate this, and Ethan's the storyteller. There's been tons of kind of rumors and, theories and stuff of people believing that Ethan is responsible for this place. What if he really is, but not the Ethan we see? Right? Not the Ethan that we were introduced to, right? It's this version that was manipulated and was, basically molded by this place in a negative manner, right? And became evil. I mean, look, it would make sense tying into Tabitha, right? She's a reincarnated version all the way down to the beginning of this place, right? You see her daughter Julie has this ability to story walk, right? It's not far-fetched to think that Ethan would have this ability as well and could potentially, like I've kind of been calling it, the storyteller, right? He's the storyteller. He's the one that is, responsible for this story taking place, and Julie's the one that's navigating it and trying to find ways to change it. It would make sense that the story that she's trying to change is the one that her brother is telling, or this corrupt version of her brother. That is just, again, like I said, 60 plus years of this place. Another thing that people might bring in is like, like why would he kill his father? Right? Well, again, if you reach a point of darkness, I mean, you hear it every day on the news, right? Like, it's unfortunate, but people kill their parents, kill their loved ones all the time, right? And especially if he's been, basically influenced and has this power now and, has kind of gone dark side. Again, it's a story as old as time, and then you have kind of the sibling, Cain and Abel type fight showdown. I think it makes a lot of sense. And to think that, it would make sense why the man in yellow knows who all these people are. Why the man in yellow is familiar with Jim and told him, hey, your wife shouldn't do that. I mean, he can't just come out and be like, hey, dad, right? Like, you need to tell mom to stop. Like, one, he's not going to listen. So if you come across some random person, it makes sense why he would know everybody. It makes sense why he would intervene and try to get things in order, right? I don't think it's that crazy. Again, we've seen the boy in white try to help and influence and, without being super direct, like, hey, you need to fix all this stuff, right? The boy in white has, chose Victor and chose Ethan. Okay, well, why? Why did he choose Ethan? Victor, okay, like Victor was the only one there for who knows how long. So it's like, all right, like, kind of makes sense. And he was a kid. As the boy in white just connecting with kids? Have there never been any other kids besides Ethan and Victor there? I think that's probably unlikely, right? Or what if he's connected to Victor because he knows what's going to come, right? And he knows that, like, hey, I need to kind of, keep tabs, keep eyes, kind of wait for the point to see if this is the path. Maybe this is the timeline where he starts to kind of go dark side. And, he kind of monitoring him from the beginning. Again, it's just an idea, but I don't think it's that crazy to think that it feels like at some point there's going to be this big twist. It feels like the man in yellow is going to be somebody that we're familiar with, grown up. Now, you could argue, like, the biggest kind of counterpoint to this idea would be that, the man in yellow is, if he's the big bad, right, he's likely been there from the beginning. However, the counterpoint to the counterpoint would be that, Julie has now affected time, right? Julie, we know that Julie can enter time. So now you start having this, which can get kind of convoluted, can get a little crazy, but you have this kind of like, this isn't just like, it's not just straightforward in FROMVILLE. Time is very different. Everything, you have reincarnation and all these tiebacks and these, from the beginning. Ethan could be the reincarnated version. Like, there's a million ways that you could kind of make him or tie him into being the man in yellow. That I don't think is the hard part. Just, is that the direction that they would go is the question. But I do think it's something that could be very interesting. I do think it's something that could make some sense. And I do think you kind of, like I said, you kind of have this like good versus evil, but you also have this good versus evil with, the son and daughter, right? Maybe even Tabitha has to make a choice or whatever, right? Like, I could see something along those lines, or Ethan kind of becomes dark, or kind of becomes corrupted, right? Like, I don't know. It could be kind of interesting. And look, you could even talk about like the phone call where it said, your children aren't yours anymore. What if that's because Ethan is slowly being manipulated, slowly, kind of losing himself in this place? And then you have, a Julie who, she's time traveling. She's doing like, what if that was something not for right now, but something for the potential future? Just a thought. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, and I pass a question on to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel with your thoughts? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Kind of mixed in the middle. Do you like the idea of him kind of being the man in yellow and growing up to the man in yellow? Again, just another idea, just theory, and you never know, right? Like I always say with From, you can't rule anything out because they can go a million different directions. And I'm curious to see how they'll kind of explain the man in yellow for the upcoming season 4. But again, let me know how you feel down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. So we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.